we are left with additional 9-point-something billion in the coffers of these agencies. And looking at what is currently confronting us as a nation, we believe that such fund should be judiciously applied. To our greatest surprise, the entire 9-point-something billion was used as recurrent expenditure, which covers training, which covers payment of dues to some international organizations. And aside all of that, nothing fundamental that this said amount was used for. That is one of our discovery. Secondly, we noticed that the same agency maintained a below-the-line account, which include the BASA fund and the Security and Safety Fund. These two funds reside in the books of these agencies. But in one of the testimony that were informed by this agency, we were told that they only maintain this fund in their account, but the utilization of that fund is not within their prerogative. That is only within the prerogative of the Honorable Minister, who has the authority to sign. And they also informed this distinguished Senate that the said fund is applied to all agencies that are under the aviation ministries, but they are the one in custody of the fund. And we're also informed that this said fund is approved in the budget of these particular agencies. And we ask, what is the propriety behind this that shows that a fund maintained by an agency that is under their purview can be used as expenditure by other agencies? Who now accounts for this expenditure? 2, in law, setting up the agencies or the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, where is it stated that this fund can be approved and signed off by the Honorable Minister? That shows that we can go ahead and apply this fund to anything. And we ask this agency to give us amount accrued to this fund within the last 4 years, amount expended from this fund within the last 4 years, and give us documents that shows that all approvals that have been sought and approved from this fund was judiciously applied, and it was approved by all the necessary authorities that need to approve before the fund is being disbursed. So all these and more are what we discuss with one of the agencies that led to your invitation. So, Honorable Minister, if you have any information that is new or different from what we have had, please, you have the floor. Go ahead. Thank you.
The 2020 to 2023 or 2021-2023 is a very critical time in our government because this speaks to the last part of our journey as a government in power. Also, to respectfully inform the committee that the ministry in itself is not a key revenue generating organ, such as NNPC, customs, and the rest of them. But however, deductions from payments to third parties, which are automatically swept, are remitted to online to government accounts in central bank, is being done in the ministry, and the details, of course, of all of this are attached for your kind review. Regarding the BASA account and the security account, BASA is for aviation development. If it's for aviation development, therefore it means that it can be utilized by INCAT especially, which is the College of Aviation Technology, be utilized by FAN, by NCA, by NAMA, by NIMET, by all the agencies, because it's meant for development of civil aviation. And development of civil aviation entails all of these agencies to work in unison to create that system where the aviation is working and perfectly and efficiently. So for that reason, all of these agencies will be sharing that money. If you look at even the Act of Civil Aviation that we passed, this National Assembly passed, it's such that there are certain percentages that goes to all of them to be utilized, covered by Act. So therefore, any collection, we thought that it would be collected centrally for more improved accountability and for a single source where we know that this money is deposited at. So also the security funds. The security is a function not only of fund, has been envisaged by other quarters, but also other agencies of civil aviation. Security, even though it's not amoebic, if you like, it has boundaries and definition, but it exists in every single part of the agency. And this can be utilized better when they are centrally collected and then redistributed. As to the question that the minister has the authority to pass, it's also an act of law. I mean, they cannot spend foreign exchange without the approval of the minister, so that there is control on the foreign exchange that we have. But having said that, Mr. Chairman, I want to inform this distinguished House that whatever has been signed by the Minister for Aviation, which is me, can be accounted for. And all the documentation regarding that effect will be submitted to this committee, and you will see that I will be able to explain whichever expenditure that I put my signature to. And you'll be rest assured that all that expenditure is either on security or on aviation development. And they can interlap sometimes. The security and the aviation development can interlap because security itself is aviation development. For example, just to give a quick example, is that aviation has changed since 2011, 9/11 rather, since 9/11. And the security has now taken center stage, not necessarily downplaying safety, but security has taken center stage. Our airports and aviation system need to be, ought to be, and must be secured. Because when we say in aviation that 1 mile long road leads to nowhere and 1 mile long runway leads to everywhere, the meaning is that you can take off from Katsina, from Akure, from Azare, and cause havoc in Beijing or havoc in Toronto. So airports are now national security assets, of which must be guarded, must be promoted, must be in accordance with the standards and recommended practices of International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO. And all of these standards and recommended practices are well spelled out. And some of the things to be done are set to be done. From your statement, example, training. Training, not only that is covered by our law and promoted by ICAO, is a must. There are certain trainings that if you don't do them, you'll even shut the airport down. Example, that of firefighting. And so many parts of them. We consider safety, or we consider training as the principal catalyst and also component of safety. Without a very well-trained pilot, very well-trained engineer, very well-trained airport manager, very well-trained certified airport manager, you are heading to crash, you are heading to disaster. The aviation security personnel, for example, ought to know and ought to be able to read the machine that you go through. If he's not trained to read that machine that you walk through, you can walk through substance or item that ought not to be on board. And his duty is to check it. And because it's constantly changing, and people are constantly devising means for which they will hide these things and go on board with them, then the equipment are changing constantly also. And the training and the skills and ability to identify these type of things is also constantly changing. So you have to be constantly training. And by the nature of civil aviation, you must be training always so that you are proficient in what you are doing, even if you know how to do it. Assuming you are just a pilot, then you have to be constantly receiving training and retraining for improved proficiency. So it's a constant factor on civil aviation that must be considered all the time. Because in an aircraft accident, or like we say, every pilot can fly, when you will be tested as to your effectiveness as a pilot is when you are faced with an emergency. And this emergency cannot be simulated in a live aircraft. You cannot put fire on a live aircraft. So the pilot cannot deal with fire on a live aircraft. So he has to go into a simulator where he can now be tested on his capacity and competence and ability and proficiency to deal with fire, either cockpit fire or cabin fire or fire from any place. So this training is extremely important. In fact, when I came on board in 2015, and I found the budget in NCAA to be, I can't remember the figure, but maybe about 500,000, I think, I multiplied it by about 4. Because there are critical elements of the International Civil Aviation Organization provided by the law and by the standards that must be in place. If they're not in place, they must be provided. Otherwise, you'll be scored 0. That is why in every single audit that was conducted under our purview, we passed it with flying colors. We passed security to 96.4%. 96.4% is near perfect. There are only a few countries in the world that passed that at that level. Of course, the almighty UAE passed 99%. And very many European countries were well above them. So we improved it from about 60% on the security to about 96.4%. And this is because we invested money on purpose to do this. Then secondly, also on matters of safety, we made this safety at a very, very low level, minimally passed, about 50-something. I can't remember the figure, but we raised it to 67.4%. And our intent is that we will raise it to about 90% before we leave, or even 94% from some figures. Now, there is something that had happened. Most of the things that we do in civil aviation are not things that people will see with their eye. I'll give you one example. From amalgamation in 1914, from amalgamation of this country in 1914, there is not a single country, a single government in Nigeria that certified any of our airports according to international standards. So when we came in, we tried to achieve that. And today, Murtala Mohammed Airport in Lagos and Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja are fully certified according to international standard, and it's the first time that happens in Nigeria. And we're on our way to doing Port Harcourt, Enugu, and Kano. I just read one of our documents before I come here, there were about 55 to 60%. And by the time we invest more money, and these are things that involve also training, largely. Training and fixing of issues that are there, most of which, like I said, the passenger may never see what we are doing in civil aviation. So some of these monies are intended for those purposes. Another quick example before I move to the next question. Another quick thing is that when we came on board, I found myself about to approve $500,000 to train firefighters in Cameroon. Because they brought 200 and something thousand, and then again another $200,000. I said, no, I cannot be taking $500,000 to Cameroon on either a quarterly basis or even half yearly. What is going on? They said, no, because in Cameroon, they've got a simulator that can train firefighters how to fight aviation fire, which is a fundamental requirement. Once your fire cover is not up to speed, you'll close down the airport. In fact, the number of fire trucks, if they are reduced, if they're supposed to be 4, they are reduced to 3, you'll close that airport or downgrade it to certain smaller aircraft, for example. So what do? We say, okay, well, since we have BASA accounts and it's for aviation development, rather than we keep going to Cameroon, let me go and beg Mr. President and beg the committees of Senate and House of Reps to ensure that we're able to procure this simulator, build it, put it in Nigeria for the use of our firefighters. We no longer go to Cameroon. And what we did is that the one in Cameroon is manual, so we provided 2 manuals, one in Abuja, one in Lagos. But the fully automated one, about 5.2 billion, we spent and put it in Zaria. So that whilst we're training our people, Zaria is earning money from fund, we also can now train other countries, which we've started doing. And gradually, because of the things that we're putting there, Zaria now has become the center of excellence for ICAO. And we received certificate to that effect. so many, very many certificates. So also when I go to weather, and because you know weather is safety, and so on and so forth. So judicious application of funds, Mr. Chairman, I want to assure this Senate, and this National Assembly that every funds that will be spent and that I approve in the wisdom of the ministry are judiciously applied. If there is any item that has been found not to be so, perhaps either it's a genuine error on our side or it has not happened. And that if we find that there is an item that is not relevant, I don't think that it will have my signature. All these bilateral air service agreement funds and that of aviation security are always approved by this Senate. The said BASA accounts and that of aviation security are approved by National Assembly before they're expended. The items will be so spelled, what will happen to them will be so spelled, the quantity of money or quantum of money will be so spent, and we spend them as approved. So therefore, every BASA expenditure and every AFSEC aviation security expenditure is approved by this National Assembly.
We are made to understand that prior to now, these two accounts are usually domiciled in the main ministry. But now, it's not an NCC. Why? Secondly, I want you to give us the status of that account between 2018 to 2020. The status of that account between 2017 to 2020, stating amount received into that account, amount expended from that account, and the breakdown of the corresponding expenditure actual between 2017 to 2020. 3. What is your take in the light of current economic challenges confronting us as a nation? If some of the funds in this account are mopped up to fund the national budget. 4. Some of the agencies under your supervision what is your take if this distinguished is reduced to a certain percentage and amount taken to fund the national budget? I'm not saying it's a definitive statement, but we are thinking along this line. But we want to hear from you, your own position, in line or in the light of the current economic challenges currently confronting the global economy. Honorable Minister, please go ahead.
So we put things in perspective. Why is that accounts that used to be in the ministry are now with the agencies? NCA, yes. It is because I was not here as a minister, but I know that the correct thing to do is because NCA do the invoicing through their system, established system, and also the aviation security is deducted directly from the passengers and done by NCA cumulatively. I think they're the best custodians of that money, and that is what the National Assembly has approved. So they are there in NCA, so we have a single source of that funding, so we can control.
You spend from that account on behalf of all agencies under your purview?
All agencies under our purview will first and foremost make a proposal to us. If it makes sense to us that they should go ahead with the expenditure or with the item, then we forward to National Assembly in our budget, and National Assembly will approve that budget. And then we'll go back to release the monies to them to make the expenditure, not the ministry. To them to make the expenditure, not the ministry. And the question regarding challenging times and whether the overheads would be mopped up to fund the budget, I don't think so. I don't think so because of the nature and the structure of both the ministry and its agencies and what is challenging us or what is facing us. Take, for example, COVID-19. we are the greatest hit sector. At the time when we came and began to implement our agenda, which is called the Aviation Roadmap, approved by Mr. President and then also shared and approved by National Assembly, when we began to implement it, we slowly became the second fastest growing sector. I'm giving you Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, and the figures of MBS. We came to become, within the 3 years of implementation of that roadmap, we become in 2018 the second fastest growing sector in the Nigerian economy after water and sanitation. And then we kept on further improving and tweaking and implementing the roadmap, which just before COVID, we became the fastest growing sector in the Nigerian economy today. And this is Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Central Bank, and Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, NBS. Because we are diligently implementing that roadmap, we became the fastest. I want to emphasize, we are now the fastest, just before COVID, the fastest growing sector in the Nigerian economy. Unfortunately, while this is going on, COVID came, act of God, and we shut down. And we are not in the business of selling, we are a service industry, we are not in the business of selling telephones, for example. So that when we shut down our shops, after COVID, we still sell the same telephone and make profit. The revenues for yesterday is lost. So therefore, we were hugely impacted upon by COVID. And this COVID, until I think the Q4 of 2021, Q4 and 2021, and perhaps Q1 of 2022, we will continue to see sharp decline in passengers. And that is directly proportional to the revenue that we collect. Because people's confidence has to be raised. They have to begin to want to fly again. And certain factors that make propensity to fly great are also being eroded during this period. So we are in a difficult, challenging time. We do not have solutions to it. And heavy and mighty countries like United States of America, like UAE, like Britain, like China, are spending huge amounts of money to support aviation businesses because of the nature and structure of civil aviation. It connects businesses, trade and commerce, culture, schools, healthcare, nation to nation, even history to history. We are even not talking about its impact on tourism. So if all of this is going on, and we are not able to do so, therefore we are not able to earn any money. And the government, because of the challenge of funding, has not been able to respond to civil aviation requests, to civil aviation funding, as other countries have done. So if government is not able to fund us because there is no income, then government should not take the little that we have to keep everybody safe. So every single agency under civil aviation, we do believe that it needs to be funded. And that is why, because we understand the nature of this business, because we know what will happen to this business, that's why we now introduce in our roadmap, for example, the concession of our airports. The concession of our airports. We've now done the outline business case. We are going ahead for the procurement to concession these airports. And the reason is simple. I've said this before this National Assembly, and I likened it to my house that you know in Ikoyi, which is sitting on 7,000 square meters of land. And it's only this Oyibo type of house, 1.5 bedroom. Assuming I'm renting that house for, let's say, 10 million in Ikoyi, and somebody comes to me and says, okay, you know what, give me this your house for 25 years. I'll put high-rise, 30 houses. And those 30 houses, they will have a tennis court, they will have squash court, they will have their own power, they will have everything. Good and security, 24 hours, and electricity. And I'll give it back to you. And then I'll give you back the house after 25 years. Now, because I'm giving it out to rent to earn only 10 million per annum, if you put 60 houses there, or 30 houses, and it's collecting 10 million times 30, that is 300 million. Then he'll give me 50 million and take 250 for 25 years. Recoup his money, and I'm making from 10 million to 50 million. And still the houses are mine. And because this government the APC government in power is social democratic in nature. It doesn't want to sell national assets. It wants to keep the assets with the people, but we can concession them and improve them and make them better. This is for improved revenue. We are very sure that when we do that, we will improve the revenue of the nation. So we are very jealous. We are not like what happened before. They sold Nitel, sold Nigeria Airways, sold everything. The public, the people have lost those assets forever.
What can you punish us with the statement of that account, the Social and Security Fund, between 2017 to 2020, expenditure that has occurred in that account within this said period? And for the other question which we've asked and you have preferred answers to, and regarding the idea that what is your take if we should shave off some things of your, you should start thinking along that line, and when you see it should not be as a surprise, it's not intentional, but it's just in the overall national interest.
Oftentimes people compare apples and oranges. They compare us with Ghana and Rwanda. Rwanda, I think the population is 10 million or thereabouts. Well, they gave their aviation sector palliative of $130 million. But that's not the point. The entire activity of all the airlines in Ghana, all of them, do not equate to the activity of Air Peace in Nigeria. The total number of passengers per annum, total, international, local, Tamale, Akara, everywhere, in Ghana, of 20 million people. The total is 450,000 passengers. Nigeria today, we are doing 18 million. And when we came on board, we were doing 80 million. We have raised it from 80 million to 18 million in these 5 years. And for you, in Hausa, I don't know how to put it in English. Maybe Santo Bello will help me. The ruwan ciki ake jin na rijiya. I don't understand that one. Santa Sankara is my elder. Gobir, the ruwan ciki ake jin na rijiya. They say that is use water inside the stomach to draw the water from the well. That may be literal. I have it in Yoruba, but I can't remember how it is. So, Mr. Chairman, that is the point. The point is that we have huge aviation market and huge advantage to do more and to contribute more to government. But we have to implement this sector roadmap, which includes national carrier, concession, everything. And then all the documents will be submitted as directed. Thank you.
The Honorable Minister of Aviation, thank you for at least coming to throw more light into questions that have been asked while we're not here. And I want to take it away from us that all the answers will probably be looked into. And as I said, in the overall interest of this country, if there is need for us to shield some, not too much, agencies under your purview to assist or support the economic recovery of this country, we will not hesitate to do that. But just you have that NTA fund and not too much, maybe like 4 billion.
To add to us.
No, to remove from their books. Thank you very much. You can leave us for now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So we have our budget estimates for 2020 and the forecast for 2021, 2022, and 2023. Now, we came in last month, distinguished chairman, and these were the numbers that had been earlier circulated for the MTEP. So we decided to bring these same numbers that were circulated to both houses of the National Assembly. But we have also looked at the numbers based on current realities that we found on the ground and had made some amendments to the 2021 budget. So I'll go first through the numbers, as they were earlier presented. For 2020, we have a total revenue budget of 12.318 billion. For 2021, we have a total revenue budget of 15.398 billion. For 2022, we have 20.017 billion, and for 2023, we have 26.023 billion. So for 2019, I have the landscape table.
Actual.
Yeah, this is actual. So we had an actual revenue outcome of 8.532 billion, while the budget for that year, 2019, was 12.00 billion, making the actual turnout 71% of the budget itself. So we didn't collect as much as we thought we would collect in 2019. Now for 2020, distinguished chairman, we have a budget of 12.318 billion. But as at the end of June, yes, we have collected 2.739 billion, making that collection only 22% of the actual budget.
Why?
The SEC relies on activities in the capital market.
I want to strongly believe that during the COVID,
there were activities. There were activities, but they were reduced, distinguished chairman. They were reduced, distinguished chairman. There were activities. We actually invoked our business continuity plans in the capital market. So both the SEC as regulator and the capital market operators were all operating for most of that period, but the activities were actually reduced, and valuations were also, lower. So we did not collect as much as we budgeted to collect.
Are you sure?
I'm sure, 100%, distinguished chairman.
Let's look at the remittance to Federation account. In 2018, you remitted only 30 million out of about 8 billion.
Yes.
In 2019, you remitted only 86 million out of 8.1 billion. Mr. Chairman, you have raised this issue with him. What is your wage bill? How much is your wage bill?
Personnel cost.
Your personnel cost?
Personnel.
The recurrent expenditure. What is your recurrent expenditure on what? Because I can't see any document relating to. Oh, it is here, but it's no, it's 2021 you have. We can't see the one for 2018, 2019. Your recurrent expenditure, which is composed of personnel, overhead, and all of that. How much is it?
Yes, actually, it's the region of 8 billion naira.
Your recurrent expenditure is 8 billion.
Yes.
No.
Huh? Personnel costs.
Yes.
What about overhead costs?
But what we have here
No, wait.
You are mixing up the DG.
Yeah.
Calm down.
Yes.
You reported a total revenue of 8.3 or 4 billion in 2019.
Yes.
And my colleague has asked you, what is your staff revenue? What is your wage bill? That is 3 billion. That's
No. I said, I only talk of the wage bill.
You are a deficit document. So I want you to tell us, what is your wage bill for 2019?
Can you get me
Please be careful.
Numbers.
Look at it. The count.
Distinguished chairman, I'm getting the wage bill.
Yes.
But before I get the bill, I will say one thing. The SEC actually has been operating a deficit budget. That is the truth.
But before we get to that, give
Yes.
us the figure.
Yes, I will give you the, I'll give you the figure.
We'll go to the next question.
Yes.
In 2018, what is your staff cost? You reported a revenue of 8.083 billion. What is your staff cost? And what is your overhead cost?
The total staff cost, distinguished chairman, in 2018 was 6.753 billion.
Okay.
And in 2019,
What's the overhead?
2.241 billion. 241 billion.
2.201.
241. 870 billion for the actual overhead cost in 2018. 1.870 billion.
1.807.
Yes.
So you have a deficit of 400 and something million in 2018.
Yes, we had a deficit in 2018 of 639 million.
So how did you, were you able to, if you have a deficit, it means you don't have money. So how were you able to send the 30 million to remain 30 million? What did you get wrong?
Yes, so what happened is that the SEC, in the days of the market boom, this was pre-2010, had accumulated certain reserves. After paying the normal statutory payments to the Federation account, had accumulated certain statutory reserves. The Nigerian Capital Market Development Fund.
That is before us is 40.
Yes.
But can we explain in accordance with the Fiscal Responsibility Act,
Yes.
it is 80% of your operational surplus.
Yes.
And if you are not making any surplus, you are making loss. There's no way the 80% can be lost. So I want you to explain to us what method was applied to arrive at this money remitted into the Consolidated Revenue Fund account. Because one financial year you recorded a deficit of 639 million. And my colleague has asked, how do you fund this deficit? Because it's clear that the combination of your salaries and wages and your overhead is more than the revenue generated by wages. And if that is the case, that shows that there are two things that will have happened. One, maybe you are not declaring some revenues. Are you with me? Maybe you are keeping some below the line accounts. Two, you are borrowing from banks. And if you do, where are the approvals? One, the management approval, the board approval, for you to borrow, to fund overhead expenditure. We will need to see. Except there are some accounts not known to us in this book which you want to bring out, which are below the line account, where you defray your expenditure. So all of this we want to know and explain with documentary evidences to buttress home your points. Because the last 3 years, 2018, 2019, it shows you have been in deficit. And how do you fund this deficit? As I've said, is there any below the line account? If not, have you borrowed? If you have borrowed, where are the approvals to borrow to fund a recurrent expenditure? You have the floor, please continue.
The SEC has been operating a deficit time now. You are the single chairman. But there were some surpluses that were accumulated during the days of the market boom. This was in the time before the crash. And these were after the normal payments to the Federation account were made. And these are the Nigerian Capital Market Development Fund.
Investors Protection.
I want to ask,
Yes.
that's why I said, if there are below the line accounts,
Yes.
those surpluses you are mentioning, they are below the line accounts.
Yes.
They are not in these books.
No, they are
We are
not.
not seeing them. We need to see them. We need to bring it out.
I apologize. I will.
See it, because if we have such a huge surplus, even somewhere, when there's surplus, you just go down. And it's not known to government. It's not known to government.
It's known.
It's a serious offense.
It's known. It's in the federal. It's actually in the TSA.
Stop. We need to know.
Yes.
We need to bring it to the table. We need to plan on it. It's not only you to plan. We also need to plan on it.
We have only one account with the CBN, which is the Treasury Single Account. And currently we have slightly above 200 million in that account. All our funds are invested in the treasury bills. And the ones invested in treasury bills, that is from the reserves. Currently, it's about 11.7 billion. Treasury bills and federal government bonds.
In essence, what you are telling us is that the remittances, which were made in 2018 and 2019, were from this account. Is that correct?
Yes, essentially, yes. They say that both the financing of the deficit and also any remittances will then be from this account. You are right, Senator.
Then your finance minister is informing us.
Yes.
It's misinforming us. Because yes, you just say that you are financing the deficit from this account. So those accounts cannot be carrying only 200 billion. Because only in 2018 you have over 400 billion.
No, he said 11 billion, distinguished chairman.
We have a treasury single account, and that is the only account that we make expenditures from. And in that account, we have slightly above 200 million. However, we have investments in treasury bills and federal government bonds totaling about 11.7 billion. Whenever we want to make an expenditure, we have to, if we have shortage of funds, we record the funds into the treasury single account, because we were told categorically by the Ministry of Finance and CBN that we cannot spend from any other account except the treasury single account.
You are misinforming us. Yes. Because what you are simply doing is that you are giving us a document of what we are to see. And those that you believe is your treasure, you hide it away from us. Because what you are simply at is your total revenue. Your total revenue, the 11 billion you have out there in the treasury market is part of your revenue. 11.7 billion.
Reserves.
I'm coming. Over the year, you accumulated this money to invest there. It's from the same revenue. It's from the same revenue. So don't say it is not. See, it's part of it. Now, legitimizing it by telling us that you are told that the Federal Ministry of Finance is not tenable to us. It's not. Because the revenue you have just shown us here, if you want to take it by the books, you are operating a deficit account. How you now fund that deficit, which is not known to this book, is only known to you, it's not terrible to us. It shows you are maintaining a below the line account. It's not supposed to be. It's not. Because here we are giving federal government, paying only 30 million into the consolidated revenue fund account. And you are keeping 11.7 billion in treasury bills. An additional 200 billion somewhere. If only we deduct 80% of operational surplus on that 11 billion, we are talking about 8 point something into the consolidated revenue fund. But you are clever enough not to show it in this book. Now, DG, we are just coming on board. Yes. This committee demands of you all relevant documents relating to all revenue sources to the Security and Exchange Commission. All revenue sources, with no exception. Those who have the treasury bills, the 200 million you have somewhere, and every other thing. With no exception, we want it fully declared. And relevant documentation to follow. Yes. Now, the staff strength is another major fundamental, is another issue. You have informed this committee that even what you generate as revenue in a month is not enough to fund your staff strength. You generate 8.5 billion in 2019, and your wage bill is about 9-point-something billion.
For the year.
It's 9-point-something billion. That shows what you are generating is not enough to even pay your staff. Not to talk less of the overhead expenditure. So, within 2019 alone, by the time we bring in your expenditure, and the deficit from salaries and wages, you are reporting in excess of about 4 to 5 billion. How do you fund that for that period? These are questions begging for answers. So we need documentation to back it up. You need to tell us how you arrive at this point. I know you are just coming on board, but we want to know, are you overstaffed? Are you fixing arbitrary salaries and wages not approved by the Salaries and Wages Commission? Are you incurring expenditure that is not in tandem with the Act of the National Assembly or the Act setting up the Security and Exchange Commission? All of these are questions begging for answers. So we need all of this. So we will not keep you here for long because we need to bring more documentation and questions to ask. But before I come to you, my distinguished colleague here, they want to ask questions. Senator Gershon, you have to talk, please go ahead.
You are the regulator of the security the regulator.
Yes.
And you are investing 11 billion in the market you are regulating. Is that not a level of insider trading or conflict of interest? How is it that SEC can be investing in the market it is regulating? We need some clarification on that, please.
Thank you for acknowledging that I'm just coming in as the DG. There is a fundamental issue that I'm happy we are discussing at this distinguished hearing, which is that the SEC is a very important agency of government. The SEC is the regulator of the capital market, distinguished senator. At the moment, the SEC does not receive anything from the federal courts. It is self-financing. So that means every single year, the SEC generates what it needs to spend as a regulator. And the cost of regulation is very high, distinguished chairman. So that is that. And as for your question, distinguished senator, we are investing in the treasury bills and the treasury bonds market, which is part of the capital market, but it's the capital market that is actually regulated by other government agencies, central bank and DMO. So we're not really like investing in shares or in collective investment schemes that we actually regulate.
This is a self-financed company, right?
Agencies.
Agencies of company, whatever it is. Now, the question here is this. Out of every 25%, out of the 5% to 25% you pay to the federal government at the end of each year. The balance of that is what you keep into the treasury, the bonds and whatever.
The 25% deduction at source only started from June of this year. So now for any revenue that goes into the SEC account, 25% is deducted at source. But before this time, it was actually at 80% of the operational surplus, which actually has not been reported by the SEC for a long time.
Chairman, I think the new DG has not been well informed. Basically, I think they need to go back to go and define what is required of them. The purpose of this interactive session is to solve one fundamental objective of this committee of research. That the nation has a deficit budget, perpetually. And bearing in mind the situation of this country today, there are some agencies charged with responsibility to generate revenue from all sources. These all sources need to be disclosed. We can appreciate the fact that the new DG is coming in, but the civil servants, they are the manipulators. It's what they want the DG, the new one coming in to see, is what they will allow you to see.
Exactly.
We want you to be transparent enough.
That's why it's on the system now.
To carry this man along to do the right thing.
It's within the system.
The question I want to ask is this.
We screened him now.
The 11 billion that was invested in federal government bonds and treasury bills is legitimate. But is it after or before deducting 80% of operational surplus? If the answer is no, go back to the books. Calculate all the years, arrears. The 80% surplus for year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. Calculate it and remit to consolidated revenue account of the government, so that the president can have money to fund the present deficit budget. Very key. We are not saying you cannot invest. The operational surplus you have need to be treated in line with the provisions of a Fiscal Responsibility Act. If you are doing anything contrary, then what you are doing is illegal. But this committee is charged with the responsibility to make corrective actions. The way you have been treating, the way civil servants have been treating all these issues before, it should no longer be business as usual. We are not saying if at the end of the day you have 11 billion from your surplus in federal government, fine and good, because you are 100% self-financing. Every kobo should not be idle. Put it there. But it must be done in line with Fiscal Responsibility Act. So if you have done it after computing 80% of original corporate, that money is yours. But if not, please go back to the books. Let the people in the account department calculate year after year the surplus they made and the transfer to invested in bonds. Calculate it. So the portion that belongs to 80%, calculate also the income on it and add it and send it to consolidated revenue so that we can correct the mistake they have been making in the past before you assume duty as the new DG. Because we know you have good intention as the new DG and you are highly disciplined. We know your background. We know your antecedent. So, but civil servant, you cannot go to the account department and teach them what to do. So the DFA of SEC, you've had me. Go back to the books, calculate all the wrongs you have made, the money that belongs to consolidated revenue account that you are supposed to have remitted year after year, add it together, then look at the income you add on it, get that 80%, add it to it, send it to, and do the right thing. So on that note, I think the new DG, you are welcome. You'll be doing a good job.
The document before us and not to an effect of time. You are giving us a document that does not reflect the true position of your financial position as an agency. And you have also alluded to the fact that there are some information as regarding your finances that are not clear, but from time to time you will use of which is used by us.
And let me also correct an impression. I know you are independent of the federal government budget, but the question and the fact is this. Revenue we are asking about is for us to be sure how much should come to the Consolidated Revenue Fund account. We are not prohibiting your activities, but in a situation whereby we are now aware of the 11.6 billion in treasury bills, an additional 200 million investment somewhere else, which is not, there is no way we can get the actual amount that's supposed to go to the Consolidated Revenue Fund. And you have even explained to ordinarily, with this your deficit account, we will say you have nothing to contribute, so yeah, you can go. But no, the SEC as a body alone, what you are contributing to the deficit, national deficit, if you look at the MTF, it's not a small figure at all. So, you are such a sensitive agency of the government that we need to know what the true position of your financials are as far as you are concerned. So to that extent, we will want you to go for now. Report back with all the relevant documents and showing clearly and stating among other things what constitutes 80% of your operational surplus in a financial year for the last 3 years. After you brought that to us and we look, then we go to your 2021 estimate for the medium-term expenditure framework. On that note, the Director General of Security and Exchange Commission and his team, we welcome you on board as the new DG, but you need to go and sit with your the financial guru in the agencies and report back. You can leave us for now.
Your agency Nigerian Investment Promotion can summarize.
Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission.
Nigerian
Investment Promotion Commission.
Council and Commission. So you are being invited to speak among other things. One, your contribution to NTA, the Million Term Education Framework. Two, your revenue as an agency of the government. I know you generate a lot of revenue. How have that revenue been constructively used, not for the betterment of NIPC, but to fund the nation's budget? We would like you to speak along the line of your revenue profile. Two, your expenditure profile. Three, amount remitted to the federal government coffers within the last 3 years, and your projection for 2021, and what the expectations are for NIPC. In 10 minutes, you have the floor. Please go ahead. Thank you.
The first thing I'll say is that NIPC was added to the schedule to the Fiscal Responsibility Act in November 2016 by a circular issued by the Finance Minister. That suggests that we're a revenue-generating agency. In the class of the agencies that you've been meeting with today, we're not nearly mates at all. The business of investment promotion, which is NIPC's primary function, the reason for which NIPC was established, globally, best practice is not a revenue-generating function. It is an advocacy function that helps investors navigate the challenges in investing in the country. But it is advocacy, it is advisory. So we advise the relevant government agencies on what is required to make Nigeria more conducive for investments. But we don't have the power to compel the things that are required based on the feedback that we get from investors. NIPC processes Pioneer Status Incentive, and it is on the basis of that activity that we actually generate the bulk of the revenues that we do. NIPC performs that function on the basis of, delegated responsibility that the President and the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment hold under IDITRA, the Industrial Development Income Tax Relief Act. Now, if you permit me, I'll start from, you had asked us to talk about, I think, 2018 to 2020. So if you turn to page 8, I'll start with NIPC's 2018 IGR. In 2018, NIPC's estimated IGR budget was 5,519 million. It would seem from that number that this was a typical year for NIPC, but it was not. In reality, the year before, we had budgeted 409 million naira, but achieved an actual IGR income of 29 million. That information is attached as page 7. So even though you did not ask for 2017, it was added deliberately to provide some context. But by in 2018, the actual amount generated was 5,590 million. The original budget for 2018 was 1 billion naira, but that budget was adjusted in the course of the year when we realized that the revenues were going to be stronger than we had originally budgeted. So this is actually the revised, we adjusted the revenue expectation up because we saw that the inflows were, stronger than anticipated.
You informed us that 2020 along the line, when you discovered that the revenue would go up, you increased the budget.
Yes.
Who increased the budget? Is it you or the ministry?
The budget was increased by the Governing Council of NIPC.
The Governing Council?
Yes, as provided in the NIPC Act, we then sent the budget to the ministry for approval.
Do you maintain any independent accounts?
What do you mean independent accounts? All our accounts are...
Account belonging to NIPC?
All the accounts belong to NIPC. All of them are TSF.
Are you in TSA?
Yes, absolutely.
So this form, 5.9 billion, goes straight to the TSA account?
Absolutely.
Are you fully funded or partly funded by the federal government?
We're partly funded by the federal
To what
government.
extent?
The federal government pays the wage bill.
The salary?
So staff salaries are paid by the federal government. Okay. The federal government also provides us with some capital and overheads, but grossly insufficient to meet NIPC's needs.
I'm coming. Can you give us an overview of the federal government budget for 2019 that your agency partake from? That is stating among other things, for the wage bill is 100%.
Yes.
Staff, right?
Yes.
For the expenditure column for 2019, how much was the budgeted figure, how much was released to you?
Okay.
For the capital, how much was budgeted, how much was released to you?
Okay.
Then we now marry the two compared to what was generated. Now, while asking that question, please can you provide us information? Out of this said amount generated by your agency,
yes.
do your agency spend anything or defray any of its expenditure from this said amount? Or this money goes straight to the government of us and nothing being expended from by the agency? You must explain to, and if you do, to what extent and what are the nature of the expenditure that you defray from this amount? So please go ahead and answer those questions.
Okay, I'll start with the first. How much personnel, overheads, and capital the federal government provided to us in 2019?
Yeah.
The budget for 2019, based on the Appropriation Act for NIPC, was 1,054,729,718. Of that, 70% was personnel. This is on page 13 of the document you have. Of that, 70% was personnel, which comes to about 743.2 million. Overheads came to 180 million, and capital was 130 million.
Overhead is what?
Overhead was 180 million. Overheads represented 17% of the Appropriation Act.
Okay.
Capital represented 12%, 130 million. In terms of actual expenditure, as I mentioned, federal government pays the staff bills. So what was released and expended for personnel was 653.97 million. It's on the schedule that you have before you.
This is 100%.
Yes.
Okay.
In relation to overheads, it was 122.5 million.
That was released.
That was expended. That translated to 99.8% of what was released.
Can I take you back from what you're saying?
Yes.
The personnel column.
Yes.
100% released, right?
No, 100%.
At the point of preparing this document, they were paying the salaries.
Yes.
And that's what accumulated to that 640-something million.
Yes.
So the following month they still pay, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now for the expenditure, for the overhead column, you said it's 180 billion. How much do you receive for 2019 overhead?
Out of the 180 million that was budgeted, we received the 122.757 million. 122.757. So 68% of the budgeted amount was released. But we expended 99.8% of what was released.
Yes, no problem.
Yes.
Of the 122 million that was released.
Correct.
Yes. What of the 130 million for capital?
Of the capital of 130 million, it was only 52 million that was released.
Thank you. That said it all. What do you generate in 2019 as an agency?
In 2019, as an agency, on page 9 of the document you have, we budgeted 1,615 million. We generated 1,523,583,026 naira 54 kobo.
How much of this amount do you expend?
In 2019, the actual expenditure, again, you have the schedule. The actual expenditure for 2019 is on page 11 of the documents that you have. The total expenditure in 2019 was 1,314,753,512,37 kobo, leaving an operating surplus of 208,828,656 naira 67 kobo.
Madam, this expenditure you are doing that is still part of overhead
The expenditure
of 1.3 billion.
what is the breakdown of that expenditure?
The breakdown of the expenditure is provided in a summary form on page 11.
I'm saying, sorry, this 1.3 billion,
Yes.
aside the 122 million federal government released to you, 1.3 billion is still part of the overhead expenditure of your agency.
Well, 1.3 it's not all overhead. Some of it is overhead, some of it is capital, some of it relates to welfare.
You either take one. It's either you go with your revenue, or you take this revenue from you and leave with the federal government budget. You must take one. We don't have that luxury of fund. You have more than enough. So you take one. It's either take your capital, take your overhead, and take your salaries. Leaving you with what you generate to pay your salary, to do overhead, take your capital, or you give us what you generate, then you have a budget. You must take one. We don't have that luxury of fund to play around with. I'm sorry to say this. It is not possible. You must take one.
Can I comment, please?
Madam, you will comment, but you must give us an answer. You must take one.
With, it doesn't sound unreasonable, except that the funds released to NIPC from the federal government in reality are insufficient to run the agency. So I would not have a problem with your proposal if the federal government funding was sufficient to run the agency.
Madam, my advice to you is to strengthen, to increase what approach to you as an agency. You work with it so that you can fund yourself and leave the federal government budget, which I believe would be good. Because, how do we explain? Your salary, 700 and something million a year, the federal government will pay. 180 million overhead, about 130 million was released. Your capital, 130, about 52, 50% of it was released. And as an agency, you still generate 1.5 billion and you expended 1.3 billion on some of the same items. Madam, I don't want us to get entangled going back and forth. This afternoon, we must make a pronouncement that, okay, we want to go up the federal budget. And your internally generated revenue will be used to fund your agency. We don't want to do that as part of our own report and recommend that we should do a down of that. It's only because agencies have been here and they've informed us that they are ready to allow federal government budget to be, and they will go on their business. You have more than enough. You should be able to do it. We need to have no stress.
It makes you totally autonomous.
Autonomous. You cannot continue to go. I will tell you, I will support you having these budgets and at the same time keeping this revenue. It's either we say, okay, if you generate X amount in the year, you should go straight to the consolidated revenue. You don't have access to it. They will continue to pay your salary, give you overhead, and give you capital. Or you say, take your capital and overhead, let me have my revenue. So you must choose one.
I'm happy that I was here when you engaged with SEC, so I can put the context of this agency in the context of that. And I think it's important that you allow me to comment.
They advise you to take one. They tell you want to take one.
No, they did not advise me to take one. They cannot advise me to take one. If you'd allow me to speak, please. If you'd allow me to speak. Yes. So, we happen to be seated when you engaged with SEC. SEC is an organization that mentioned they have about 600 staff, and their wage bill, if I heard correctly, was either 6.75 billion or 9 billion. 600 staff. NIPC has 211 staff. The wage bill that is covered by government, that was budgeted and actually paid in 2019, was less than 700 million naira. It is a parastatal. No, we don't. My point is that it is a fraction of what SEC pays its own staff.
you should view yourself from the angle that are we on the same level with SEC? If you're on the same level with SEC, you can do that as a basis. But if you now want to put yourself side by side with SEC, you will not be fair to yourself. Because by virtue of your volume of expenditure compared to that of SEC, you are not near each other. So the best bet for you, madam, instead of trying to convince us on this side of the divide, we have given you a very straightforward option. Like when you generate 5 billion naira in 2018, how much do you expect from it?
Excellent question. When we generated 5 billion naira, I will tell you what we remitted to the Consolidated Revenue Fund.
How much do you expect from that 5 billion? This is what we want to know.
From the 5 billion, I think the budget, the expenditure budget in that year was about 4 billion.
That you expended?
The expenditure, yeah, it was about.
About 4 billion was spent by your agency in that year.
It was about. I don't have the actual numbers here, but the amount that was remitted to the Consolidated, sorry, if you'd allow me, please. The amount that was remitted to the Consolidated Revenue Fund in that year was 1,354,525,327 naira 50 kobo. I've heard other agencies speak who generate a lot more than NIPC, but their remittance to the Consolidated Revenue Fund is a fraction of what NIPC has. And I think it's important that we put this in the appropriate context.
We have genuine intentions to improve this economy and to ensure that this nation that is endowed with abundant resources in all ramifications, we have capacity to finance our budget from what we are generating. But because there are a lot of loopholes, leakages, civil servants take that advantage. Whether I optimally perform or not, my salary will be paid. The Federal Inland Revenue Service, the Nigerian Customs, they are being funded with just 4% of their, their AGR. I think I'm better because you sound very intelligent, Madam DG. And I know you have the capacity to encourage your team of strategists who can deliver. To go solo like SEC, self-financing, leave government budget. Let's use that one to finance some of our deficit. Then encourage your staff to go all out to double this your revenue. They can double it. Anybody who cannot double it, you give him a target, go to your father's house. You will see everybody will sit up. You will come here to come and report next year that you have returned 15 billion surplus over your expenditure, and we will give you credit. So this issue of having overhead from what do you call it, personnel cost from the budget, will make staff to be lazy, and you are basically a GRO agency to bring in money. Encourage them with motivation, and then leave federal government budget alone. Be self-financing. You will know that your staff will be better placed, and they will smile to you. This is my submission, Mr. Chairman.
Your revenue was 5,590,000,000 in 2018. Am I correct? And you remitted about 1.something billion to 1.6 to the Federation account. So you had a balance of about 3.something billion, right? And you still collected money again from government, overhead and salaries and all that. What did you do with the 3 billion?
You would indulge me, please. I appreciate the advice you've given. And if NIPC had revenue that was strong enough, in reality, it is probably better off as a self-financing agency. But the reality of NIPC's revenue is that that is not the case. If you look on page 14, we have taken the liberty, yes, page 14 of the pack you have, we've taken the liberty of providing a summary of NIPC's revenues from 2016 to July 2020. So you can see how the revenues are not sustainably standard. So it is difficult, because of the huge fluctuations, it is difficult for the revenue to be on a predictable basis. That's the first thing. The second thing is that as I mentioned, NIPC, as an investment promotion agency, is primarily an advocacy agency. The business of investment promotion itself is not revenue generating. And if you look at the breakdown of NIPC's revenue, you will see that the bulk of the funds come from pioneer status incentive that NIPC grants. Now, that is a moral hazard. And I will explain what I mean by moral hazard. The pioneer status incentive allows companies in activities that qualify as pioneer to benefit from a 3 to 5 year income tax holiday. NIPC earns a percentage now of the taxable profit they make in the year. So if you ask me to increase the revenue, you're inadvertently asking me that we should give out more pioneer status so that we can generate more of that 1% revenue that we generate. Essentially, we'll be giving out a lot of skin for a few drops of blood. Very soon, you know, we will kill the things that should not be killed. So the point is that the revenue that NIPC generates comes from granting an incentive that relieves the companies of paying company income tax for 3 to 5 years. We generate a percentage of that. So if you want us to increase the percentage that we generate, it means that more people will not pay that income tax holiday. And surely that cannot be in the country's best interest. So we recognize the moral hazard. And it is on that basis that we process the applications responsibly, ensuring that only those who are eligible for the incentive get it. If you look on page 14, you will see NIPC's revenue history over the last 5 years. And if you'll allow me to say it out loud, in 2016, the budget was 425 million. The actual recorded was 296 million naira. In 2017, the budget was 409 million. The actual recorded was 29 million naira. 29 million from January to December. Those 2 years are probably not standard years because the pioneer status incentive was on an administrative suspension from 2015. Now, in 2018, because pioneer status incentive, because the administrative suspension had been lifted.
I don't need to look at your papers. Don't talk to me. I know all that you have been saying from 2016, 420-something, when it was released, the budget was this, 29 was give us justification why we should not take you out any of those two. We should leave you. But we are saying that yes, even we are giving justification as to why we should continue to sustain you. I have a question for you concerning the area of the pioneer legislation. There are many companies that are even qualified for this pioneer legislation that were not given already, that are still outstanding there. On that, these guys that their papers are being processed or being looked into. So those ones who are there, and that also is to drive our economy, is to encourage local companies to come up. So now, going forward, either you say, okay, we use this as a test case for you, but you must leave your overhead and your capital or something out of it. Well, maybe we sustain your salaries for now. But your capital and expenditure will go. We will not encourage you to still have everything that you had in 2019, 2020, and then again in 2021. No. What are we here for? So your capital, your overhead, you should be ready to relinquish and just split your salaries and whatever you generate to take care of all other expenses.
Go back, consult, look at the issue, and then come up with what you want. I think it's better.
On that, the ES of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Council.
Commission.
I don't love the commission. We want you to, as you have recommended, that you go back, look, consult, put everything into perspective, and come up with a position that is in the interest of the country as a whole, and your agency as a whole. Our own recommendation going forward is you look at it in the area of take the salaries and your revenue and leave the
it's with that we'll round off this edition of the program from the National Assembly. I'm Ignatius Nkwo. Enjoy the rest of our programs.
When you hear that sound, you know that Nigeria's most authentic newscast is about to begin. NTA Network News.
A national communion.
From dusk to dawn, 24 hours, NTA International is with you in your living room, office, everywhere and anywhere. We provide the company you desire in terms of balanced and up-to-date news, programs and the best of entertainment. Tune in to DSTV channel 251, GoTV channel 91, Freeview UK channel 264, or you can download www.visiontv.co.uk. App for iOS or Android, Intelsat 901 degree east. You can also see us on Facebook and YouTube for quality content on the go. NTA International, Africa's window to the world.
From dusk to dawn, 24 hours a day, NTA International is with you. In your living room, office, and everywhere, anywhere. We provide a company you desire in terms of balanced and up-to-date news, programs, and the best of entertainment. Tune in to DSTV channel 251, GoTV channel 91, Freeview channel 264, or live streaming via www.visiontv.co.uk. Application for iOS or Android. Intelsat 901/332.5 degrees east. You can also see us on Facebook and YouTube for quality content on the go. NTA International, Africa's window to the world.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.